welcome everybody to our third installment of our QIP Journey web series. This is measurement session number 2. Data collection, fingers and toes are not enough. Very happy that you could all join us today on Friday the 13th. And like all of our other chapters, this is being recorded and with the intention to share on our YouTube channel, as well as our website and through our social media. So just letting you know that we are recording today. And if we could advance the next slide, Rishi. So for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to use Zoom, we're going to run through quickly some controls together. So in the bottom left of your screen, you'll see a microphone icon as well as a video icon. If you click on either of those, you'll see a red line appear, and that means that either your microphone is off, so you're muted, or your video is off, so you're not showing your image in the gallery. It's your choice whether or not you want to turn on your video today, but do know that it's not recording your gallery view, and it is nice to see everybody, but we understand if your video is off. And throughout the webinar today, we do ask that if you have a question to please use the chat function, which I'll go over in a second, as opposed to speaking, and to reduce background noise, if you could please keep yourself muted unless you're verbally asking a question at the end of today's session. I believe our good friend Chris is going to be moderating the chat, so we're happy to answer your questions as we go through the content today. And you will see that chat function in the bottom right-hand corner. It's the little speech bubble with the 3 dots. So just click on that. You'll see a box pop up and just throw your question in there. And if we just go to the next slide. Great. So learning objectives for today are to know how to create a measurement plan, understand how to complete measurement operational definitions, including your numerator and denominator and target setting, know how to record measures on the QIP template, understand how to graphically display and interpret data, know the pitfalls around data collection and analysis, and discuss keys to success. So like all of our webinars, we hope that you're joining us today with an open mind and willingness to learn. We ask that you do respect the opinions of others if everybody is coming from a different place. And that segues nicely into our question of what region of Ontario are you joining us from today? So if you could please indicate that in the chat, be it the North, East, West, Central, or like myself here in Toronto. So we'll just give folks a moment to answer that. Nice to see some familiar faces popping up in the chat. Thanks, Nosh. Okay, so we know that quality improvement is a priority. This has been stated through various bodies, including the Ministry of Health, Centre of Excellence for Mental Health and Addiction, as well as Ontario Health. So we want to improve quality, implement innovative solutions. Centre of Excellence is looking at performance indicators to establish and monitor performance expectations. And Ontario Health has a mandate to bring together a unified single team to execute government strategy, oversee healthcare delivery, improve clinical guidance, and extend and strengthen quality, performance, and capacities across the continuum of care. Got a nice supporting graphic there. If we just go to the next, yep. So this is an image of a quality improvement plan that just appeared at the bottom of your screen. And we can go to the next slide. So our 2 roles in healthcare, you're familiar with this if you've attended IDEAs. All healthcare professionals have 2 jobs at work, providing care and improving care. I think it's a nice grounding reminder. I remind my wife all the time of this, who happens to be a veterinarian. And of course, this is a role that we all play. We just go to the next slide. Great. So this is a recap of our first 2 chapters. So we flagged that when you're doing a quality improvement plan, you want to start with what you know and look for what stands out. Reference the quality domains. There's 6 of them. I'm not going to list them here, but you can see them in the second bullet point, and they are near and dear to us. Use others. You're not alone when you're setting out in this QIP journey. You've got lots of data available to you, and there's a little bit of reminder of where you may find sources of data. And everything that counts can't be counted. So look out for your qualitative data as well. Just go to the next slide. So here are today's panelists, some of my favorite people. We've got Debbie Bang, Director of Quality Improvement at Addictions and Mental Health Ontario and co-lead of E-QIP. We've got Alice Strom, Quality Specialist at Ontario Health. Rishi Navar, QI Data Coach of E-QIP. And Noshaba Degeni, Director of Quality Improvement at CMHA Ontario and co-lead of E-QIP. So with that, I am going to pass the mic over to Debbie Bang.
Good morning, everyone. So this slide will be familiar, and just a reminder that we do collect a lot of information that we can use from a measurement perspective. And thank you to Chris Babcock for pulling this one together for us. But think about all the different pieces of information that you have at your fingertips that you can use to help you make a decision about what it is you ought to do next. So next slide, Rishi. So today we're going to talk a little bit about measurement plan, target setting, where it fits in with the QIP, and also denominators and numerators. So the measurement plan, and we'll give you an example of what that looks like, and we'd be happy to send you a copy that you can use if that would be useful for us. Just get in touch with E-QIP and we're happy to do that. But data, most importantly, needs to be important to the team. It needs to be something that matters to the team. It helps you determine if improvement is occurring. So we sort of look at data at the beginning, and then we look at data after we've made some changes, and it lets us know whether or not something has happened that's hopefully in a positive direction. We want to make sure our measurement relates directly to the area that we're changing. So nothing worse than figuring out these brilliant change ideas, but not having a measurement tool to go with it, or vice versa, figuring out a brilliant measurement tool, but it's not actually measuring what it is you were hoping to measure. So make sure those two align. And then to think about a dashboard or a measurement tool that helps you sort of track what's going on. And it's a great way of reporting information back to your executive sponsor, as well as your team, and to talk about that or brag about that data collection that you're doing and be able to show it in a visual so everyone can see it as well. Next one, Rishi. So this is a measurement plan that we have from the IDEAS program, and it just talks about the measurement names, so what it is you're actually measuring, so whether or not it's the number of people enrolling in our brand new service that we've started, the type of measurement, we're going to count the number of people that attend, our numerator, how many people actually come compared to how many we were hoping would come, sorry, the number who actually come compared to who we hope would come, how we're going to track that, whether we do it as a pre and a post, or whether we measure it at a certain point in time. Our goal might be, or something like a target, what we're hoping for people, number of people to attend, how we're going to collect that data, and then who's responsible for doing that. And so you can take each of your different measurements, whether they're your outcome measure or your process measure or your balancing measure, which is on the next slide, and just figure out who's going to be responsible for keeping track of that. Next one. So this will be familiar to those who have been on one of our other earlier webinars, but we talk about these as a family of measures. So the most important, they're all very important, but the outcome measure aligns with our aim. It's what it is we're trying to change or what it is we're trying to accomplish. So, and it should be in the voice of the client. So the client would like to be able to get into our program from the point at which they send in a referral to when they actually see somebody in 2 weeks. They'd like that to be and that might be our outcome measure. Our process measure might be all the different change ideas that come around that we would like to try to achieve that outcome. And so the change ideas we're going to try. And the balancing measures are sort of that, it's not the negative Nelly, it's the person who keeps track, or the measurement that keeps track of whether or not making this change affects something else. So sometimes those are for the good. You know, if we do this fabulous referral system and we get all these new clients, the outcome may be, or the balancing measure may be also tracking to see whether or not it's manageable from a work perspective for the team. So that might be our balancing measure. Next slide.
Just before you get too far, Debbie, a quick question about whether that blank plan you showed is available on Quorum or at another site?
I'm betting it is available on the Advancing QIP. We probably have it, Ash, on the, yes, it's on, and probably on our website as well, on our E-QIP website.
Okay.
So you can have numerous places that you can look for it. Thank you for asking.
Yep.
So just a quick piece about numerators and denominators. And for those of you who are brilliant at math, this may be really simple for you and not at all difficult. I found a little video that we're going to try to play for you that talks about the difference between a numerator and a denominator. So Rishi, can you roll it? Fingers crossed, everyone.
This song will help you learn the difference between numerator and denominator. The first two letters of numerator are NU, just like in the words never under, and numerators are never under. The first letter of denominator is D, just like in down, and denominators are down. They're the bottom part of a fraction. Here we go. Let's learn those fractions.
Say numerator starts with NU for never under, and U for never under.
Numerators are on top.
Denominator starts with D now, D for denominator, D for down.
Denominators are on the bottom.
When it comes to writing fractions right, it's never under, that's alright. Numerator's right on top. It shows how many parts you have, pieces of the whole possess. Fraction right, you just can't stop. It's the 5 and 5/6, it's the 4 and 4/3, it's the 8 and 8/9, alright. Shows how many parts of the fraction you have in every old fraction you write. Say numerator
Numerators never under.
for never under, and U for never under.
They're always on the top.
Denominator starts with D now, D for denominator, D for
Denominators
down.
are always on the bottom.
Denominator starts with D, just like down, as you can see the parts it takes to make one whole. Denominator always down, the closest number to the ground. Denominator starts with D. It's the 6 and 5/6, it's the 3 and 4/3, it's the 9 and 8/9, alright. The number of parts that there are in one whole, in every old fraction you write. Say.
So wasn't that a thrill? So we'll just go back to our, so just wanted to put this in real terms, but should you wish to watch the rest of that video, there's a couple more minutes yet to go. Can you just click on Rishi to the, just as an example that we pulled up for you. So if we take an OPOC question like number 27, so staff helped me develop a plan for when I finish the program and treatment, the total completed OPOCs for that particular organization from April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2020 was 253. The number who strongly agreed or agreed was 173. So the numerator becomes 173, the denominator becomes 253. And just for interest, that's 68.4% said strongly agree or agree. Okay, making sense about numerators and denominators? Karen, I think, is going to be humming along, Karen Devlin song. All right, next slide. Okay, just a quick little opportunity for us to think about numbers and what's important when we're doing measurement. So, and this is from Alice, so thank you for that. So if I asked you to count the number of people who walked into a room, what questions would you have for me? And if you can put those in your chat box, in our chat box, which I see there's tons in there at the moment, what sort of questions would you have for us if you were going to count?
See, Chris, the work that I did up front to ask about how many people are joining, this is the same kind of thing.
Exactly.
Due diligence.
Walked in more than once, repeat guest, what room?
I'm not going to summarize these. I think you can see them flash by really quickly there.
Yeah. What if it rolled in? Yes. Pregnant women? Yeah. Does the dog count? Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Exactly. So we need parameters around why it is and what it is we're measuring in order to get an accurate count. And I think I'm passing it over to Alice at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. And if I break into song, it'll sound like the numerator denominator song because it really is stuck in my head at this point. But it's as simple as it seems, and even those of us who didn't made it through math in high school painlessly. It's important to take a step back and think about what is the numerator and what is the denominator. And that little in and out of the room exercise is a great one even to play with your team. If people are saying, oh, yeah, I know what the date is we have to collect. Yeah, I know. make sure you know, because the worst thing that can happen is you come back together a week later, people have put their blood, sweat, and tears into data collection, and it's not the right data because everybody wasn't thinking the same numerator, same denominator, or hadn't asked those questions. So on the next slide, we relate data and measures to our tried and true model for improvement. And as Debbie pointed out earlier, with our outcome, process, and balancing measures, measurement comes into play in a couple of places in our model for improvement. Obviously, the second question, how will we know that change is an improvement? Clearly, there's measurement involved with that. But remember, and most often it's what we call the big dot or the outcome measure, depending on the context of your aim statement. But we also don't want to forget about the fact that we are collecting data to determine the success of the change being tested, which are our process measures. And of course, as Debbie mentioned, our balancing measures to make sure that we aren't creating unintended consequences, up to your behind in amphibians when we were just trying to drain the swamp kind of thing. There is measurement mentioned in your aim statement as well, just to clarify that. And the direction of your measurement is specified in your aim statement. So an increase or a decrease, a reduction, whatever the word is that you want to use, that's where we tell people what the direction is that we're hoping that our data is going to take. So when we think about why measurement's important, and if this webinar had have been last week, the image on the next slide probably would have made an awful lot more sense to you. As it was an awful lot warmer and some of us were still on the golf course last week. We aren't this week. But measurement's important. This may seem obvious to you, but we need to, if we want to understand whether something is improving, increasing, decreasing, we need to collect data. And if we want to confirm if perception is in fact reality, we need to collect data. So we might feel like our golf score is getting better, but unless we're actually collecting data, we won't know. It might feel better, but why does it feel better? And the type of data that we're collecting will be relative to what better looks like. Are we trying to putt less? Are we trying to pick up the ball less often? I might play in a fairly casual golf group. Are we taking less mulligans for do-overs, as we call them? But it is important because otherwise we won't really be able to tell if we're getting better or not. But the one thing that we want to remember is that we want to make data collection easy. It doesn't have to have massive Excel spreadsheets. So the next slide shows us some pretty simple, and maybe some of you did this recently. This is a pre-COVID Halloween shot. But you were trying to keep track of how many kids come to your house for Halloween. Well, we don't need a complicated spreadsheet with a number of sums and formulas in it to do that. A little sticky note with our favorite little 4 sticks and a cross between to equal 5 works just fine quite often in data collection. And don't forget, as the next slide shows, we can also make it fun. So this is a very real data collection tool that was used in a rehab setting. It was done at Christmas time, so that's why it's a wreath. And the red dots, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, there are some red dots on a template there. And a dot was added to the wreath each time a certain thing happened. And the thing they were trying to make happen was to activate their rehab clients more often. And so it was the number of times that somebody was up on their feet and out of bed. I believe it was I think this was a post-stroke unit. And so they made it fun. And, each day they could have another wreath that they put up and somebody just had to count the dots. And, here's a shocking fact. People are way more likely to put red dots on a wreath than they are to enter numbers in an Excel spreadsheet. Shocking, I know, but this is the way it works. We also had a personal experience of giving somebody a very extensive Excel spreadsheet and putting it in their computer and asking them to count a certain number of times something happened every day. And we got back together a week later and the Excel template was blank. And, of course, I wanted to know why it was blank. Well, because I can't open another document on my computer while I'm doing this, and it was just too hard. I said, okay, you figure out a better way that works for you, that is where your workflow, because I didn't think about the balancing measure of the amount of work that I was causing with this Excel template. You think about a better way. Next week, we had a meeting and this person came back with perfect data each day, all nicely tabulated. So I said, what did you do differently? So because they were counting the number of times something happened and they were at a reception desk, they started every day with an empty glass bowl on the left and a full glass bowl on the right. And every time this particular thing happened, they moved a bead from the full bowl to the empty bowl. And then at the end of the day, they counted the beads. Same idea as the wreath. Make it fun, make it simple. Let the person who has to collect the data figure out how it's going to work best for them, because otherwise you'll only get their best effort at doing something that doesn't fit in their workflow. The next slide is a famous data quote. You know, in God we trust, all others must bring data. I will tell you that unequivocally, there is no way to be able to tell if you're moving in the direction that you want to improve, up or down, unless you have data. Don't forget that includes qualitative data. But if you tell me tomorrow that that today is better than yesterday, I'm going to ask you how you know that. And you might say because you feel less tired. Less tired is data. But data is what we need in order to tell us if we're moving in the right direction. When we think about linking all this to your aim statement, the next slide shows us again, where does data come in? So, you know, we have our measure that we're looking for in the aim, as I showed you in the model for improvement. We're going to increase or decrease by a certain percentage, a certain thing that happens at a certain time to a certain group of people. Then, of course, we're going to have the data that helps us when we're actually testing those change ideas, and that's where our process measures comes in. And remember that balancing measure to make sure that we're not causing something negative to happen or less than desirable to happen because of this project that we're undertaking. And just like everything else that we're doing, we will constantly be refining our data collection methods, and the way in which we look at our data in order to improve not only the process that we're working on, but the process of working on that process. And so when we begin to identify data that is what I refer to as IBU data, it's interesting, but it's useless. Stop collecting IBU data. Don't collect just in case data unless you truly believe the case is going to happen. Otherwise, you're just wearing people out. When we think about data in relationship to the QIP, the next slide shows us how all these pieces fit together. So those of you who are familiar with the QIP template, we have our color-coded red, lilac, green. And when we think about measures, if you can click again for me, Rishi. This is our first question from the model for improvement. What are we trying to accomplish? And there's measurement in our aim. When we think about the second question, how will we know changes in improvement? Those are the measures relative to what it is we're trying to change, improve within our quality improvement plan. And then our change ideas go over into the green section, the changes that we'll make. But don't forget that each one of those change ideas, one more click, Rishi, also have data associated with them, because this is the only way that we're going to know whether or not all this time and effort that we're putting into trying to improve something is actually paying off. Now, having said that, the next slide is my favorite quote about data and quality improvement. In quality improvement, we're always using our data for light, not heat. It's not about judgment. It's not saying, oh, look, we got so much worse because last week this happened 10 times, and this week it happened 20 times, and we're getting worse. Well, that may be true, but there really isn't much point in having a discussion just around the fact that you're getting worse by judging the fact that going from 10 to 20 is worse. What is important is saying, why do you think we went from 10 to 20? What might we be able to do about that? What new change ideas can we try that'll help to reverse this, to make us go from 10 to 5 next week, to half instead of double? Use it for light, for learning, be curious, not for heat judgment. We can get stuck in judgment for a long time. Judgment doesn't change things. Light learning changes things. And so when we think about how this fits in the progress report, the next slide shows us a little snippet from the progress report. Now, for those of you who are in QIP mode, you don't submit a progress report until the second year because you don't have a QIP to report on. So progress is always a look back on what happened the previous year. And you'll see how in the progress report, we ask you to use your data for light, because we're not asking you to judge what happened. We're asking you to name the indicator. What's the OPOC question? When you're in your second year of a progress report, you'll have last year's performance and last year's target. So we can say, oh, look, here's what happened a QIP ago. And then we'll say what happened in this year's target, in this year's progress report, that will be 2021. And what are your comments? And comments are, what did you learn? This change idea didn't work. This one did. This one isn't sustainable. This one caused too much work. This one has now been adopted. This one's been abandoned. Use it for light, not heat. And so since we're talking about target setting and you're starting to see the word target in the QIP, I'm going to pass to Noshaba, who's going to talk about target setting.
Thanks, Alice. So as Alice was saying, so Rishi, you can move to the next slide. This is just one of the elements within a quality improvement plan. It's something which, as you start thinking about your data, as you start getting data in, it's an opportunity for you to pause and look at your data. As Alice said, light, not heat, but look at it and try to understand what you're trying to achieve. So when you're thinking about targets, when you're planning for your improvement and you need to have information, some of the things that you need to be able to set yourself a target are you need to know what your current performance is. You need baseline data, or you need to have, and you may not have data. Some of it may be just based on the discussions you had, the knowledge you have of the area, and you may want to estimate your baseline the first time you're doing it. That will give you a chance to at least start thinking about it. You want to know what direction improvement is. That generally sounds like something that should be fairly straightforward, but I will caution there are going to be some places where you want to you want to think through what improvement looks like and what might be the interpretation of direction. And the example I'm going to use is one that we have that hopefully many of you are familiar with. It's readmission rates. So if we think about readmission rates, generally and whenever hospitals talk about it, whenever we talk about it provincially, we talk about it as a system, we think we want to reduce readmission rates. But is there a point at which reducing any further actually is limiting access? So direction may seem like you're always going in a constant forward direction. For some indicators, you want to be pausing and thinking about what does that continuing in that direction mean. I don't think anyone would ever say a 0% readmission rate is actually a good thing, because that would suggest that there is something happening potentially to access for people that's a problem. And so that's when I won't spend any time talking about it, because we start getting into balancing measures and other information. But it's just to say, keep in mind when you're thinking about your measurement, what direction you want to go in. Oh, sorry. When you're thinking about setting yourself a target for performance. And so one of the things I'm going to pause and just say, benchmarks and targets are a confusing language. And so I'm going to stick mostly to using the term target. You'll see benchmark on the next slide, and I'm going to just suggest for now, treat them as if they're the same thing, because we're not going to spend any time talking about what the distinction is between them. And then in a future, if people want to have a discussion, I am open to setting up 1-hour meetings to talk about 10 targets and benchmarks. It's something I really enjoy doing. Those of you who know me know that I can pretty much spend a day talking about data and measurement. So when we talk about setting targets, what you want to do is you want to be setting something that is achievable to your organization, but also aspirational. You don't, it's a hard balancing act, but this is where this is to me the fun of data, where you're actually looking at your data and you're thinking about it as information on how you're performing, information on what you're trying to achieve, information on what the impact of you trying to achieve that might be. So as we talk about achievable and aspirational, it's that balance between what is it going to take for us to move this number? How much do we really want to move it, and how much do we want to commit to that movement? When we're thinking about setting targets, you want them to be agreeable to your stakeholders. In many cases, your stakeholders, when you're setting yourself targets for performance are going to be your staff, your senior team, your clients. When we talk about it at a system level, it could be policymakers, it could be other providers, it could be system planners. One of the things you can think about when you are looking at setting yourself performance targets is how are your peers doing, and how is the sum of your peers doing? So the provincial number or some kind of aggregate number. Rishi, you can move to the next slide. So this slide actually just kind of lays out one of the approaches you could take to setting a target. And this is data that we have on from OPOC. It is from our first COP. Our first COP members, and it is the percent of people on their OPOC who strongly agree that the wait time for services were reasonable to me. You can see across the range of organizations, there's a range of performance. So Rishi, if you could click, you'll see that the provincial number that we have here is 85% approximately. If you were agency A, your performance is at about 82, 83, I think that is. Sorry, I can't read it very well now. And you could be looking at saying, okay, this is something that we are going to put a bit of resource into, a bit of time into. And so we could set ourselves a target of the provincial number. We could set ourselves a target of improving the percent of people that agree to 85%. From 83%, we're going to try to go to 85%. That sounds like a very small number. But remember, again, like you're talking about the resources that you're going to be putting into something, the work that you're going to be doing. If you really wanted to set yourself something more aspirational, you could look at some of your peers and say, you know, a lot of people are doing in the 90s. Maybe I'm going to set myself the performance target of the best performing organization, which is organization I, which is at almost 97% of people are agreeing with me, agreeing that this is that the wait time is reasonable. So when you're setting yourself a target, it's what I strongly encourage you to do is look at your data, look at what it's going to take to move it, look at what people have capacity to do. And if you set yourself a target that's out of range, it can be really disheartening for people, and they really won't put the resources into it. They won't put the commitment into it. On the other hand, if you set something that's really low, it may just kind of feel like we don't have to do anything to meet this target. So it is that kind of that discussion around balance, and it should always be done in collaboration with the people who are doing the work and with your senior team. So I'm going to stop there and pass it over. I'm not sure who I'm passing it to. I think then, yeah. Okay, passing it to Rishi.
Thanks, Nashara. And so continuing on the same lines of my other presenters from Deb, Alice, and Nashara about data, and there is so much variability around us. Variation is normal in any system or any process. It's travel time, depending upon what mode of the travel that you take, car, public transit, the road, that's going to vary. Each day is going to be very different from the other day. Body weight, there is interpersonal variation, and there is between variation among people as well. Time from referrals, we see the first referral coming to the actual appointment, and there might be various reasons. This was just another stock market. We always see, oh, the stock went up, stock went down. There is variation. It's going to be a normal part of the system. And that's why measurement plays a big role in this, how it affects the outcome. And if you saw a report, we always run monthly reports, quarterly reports, or a weekly report, depend. And if you see month after month, day after day, the same value, it's 100% satisfaction. Is it right? You need to always question, right? Like, oh, there has to be some variation. It cannot be always constant if it's perfect, a normal system. And that's why there is a variation, and some variation is expected, some is not. And that always gives you an opportunity to question why that is. And the basic principle of our quality improvement is to reduce this amount of variation. To make sure that our improvements are making an impact. And just on the same lines, as I was saying, there's various, some are normal variation, like common cause. There is always going to be different from day to day on various levels. That's a normal ebb and flow of the process. Public transit, as we said. is going to vary. Your clinical values, they're going to be variation depending upon what time of the day of the measurement that you're doing. Your body weight, blood pressure is very fluctuating among different times of the day. OPOC scores, they're going to be different depending upon when you do. So that's going to be always a normal common cause. So don't get overhyped because you got 100% scores or like a satisfaction from the clients, but because that's going to be a, or if they are varied from one month to another when you're doing the blitzes, wait times, that's going to be always like depending upon the circumstances. Crisis calls, there'll be, but on an average, you see that we get 10 calls a day or 20 calls a day. So that's a normal common cause variation in the system. And then there is a special cause when we see that something has happened. It's because the circumstances are different. And to understand that plays a big role in this, in any improvement efforts. And that wasn't expected, be it positive or be it negative. And so going back to the transit example, so if there are holidays, summer vacations, a road closure, a detour, then you may end up spending more time than your regular time. So there is a special cause. It's not going to happen every day. It might be just, and then you adjust on your level. We talk a lot about the impact of COVID, and unfortunately, COVID would have been a special cause had it not been a visitor for such a long period of time. We always talk, if a guest overstays his invitation, then he's no longer a guest. He has to pay the bills as well. So COVID is that. So it's not a special cause anymore because it's been here for the last several months, and it has been impacting for next a little while as well. So whatever effects we have been seeing, increase in demand, increase in crisis calls, increase in the client satisfactions, that's going to impact a longer period. So it's not a special cause anymore, and that we need to consider. So demand for service as well. There might be a certain reasons during holidays or some that the demand is very high, or crisis calls, for example. Clinical values as well, unusual blood values. So always pay attention to those. So there's this understanding between the common cause and special cause. And any improvement works, like unless you identify the special causes and remove them, you won't be able to make those improvement efforts in your quality improvement work. So pay attention to the special cause, don't ignore them, and make sure that the common causes are where you want to make that significant changes. So I know many of you will be turning your eyes when you see this. This is a lot of information. Nobody likes to see, even myself. When we see this is a lot of data. It's great, as Alice was saying. It's interesting but useless when we see on such a big level. These are several different clinics or your multiple locations. Gathered over a period of time, 11 weeks between the wait times and the client satisfaction. So if you see so what's wrong with this data? And it looks like the average waiting time in all these 4 clinics is the same. Does that make sense? As I was saying earlier, like if you see month after month or week after week, your reports giving you the exact same value, you should flag there is something concerning, and that's what it is. That when you take only an overall average or something like that, you don't necessarily get the right picture. So is there a better way? And of course, when we ask that question, there is a better way, or there has to be a better way, as Alice and Naushba was talking about earlier, how to represent that. And if you see in this graphical representation, you see that each four different clinics, there is a variation. And now you can see a clear representation of why one clinic is different from the other, why the wait times are affecting the client satisfaction between the clinic 1 and clinic 4. And that's why we need to visually, it makes more clarity when you present the data on a graph rather than be in a descriptive statistics like a table. And that's where run charts come into play. And as we say, what is like how when you represent a data over a period of time, then you can see if there was some improvements, some changes that cause a significant change, significant result. As you can see here, what was the effect because of a cat was away and all the mice were happy because, oh, now we have more food to eat, something like that. So pay attention to that, and when you represent your data over a period of time, it gives you much more visual clarity. So that gives the leverage to run charts. So what is a run chart? As I was saying, it's a graphical display of data plotted in a chronological order. It's the same way that you plot your data, but it's a period of time rather than seeing just one single point or one single data value, but you plot over a period of time. It's very easy to develop because you're just continuing gathering data, but you're plotting over a period of time. So time is on the y-axis, and it's simple. It's on. The simplicity makes the tool, it's very valuable in communicating variation between the common cause and the special causes. And why will you use it? So understand baseline performance, as Noshaba was saying earlier, and identify opportunities for improvement. So to determine if the change is actually resulting in improvement, what direction is it going? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it helping in our what we were hoping for? Are our assumptions, our theories being met? So that gives a very visual valid use from run charts. And are we ready to spread? Is it good enough data? So, and to understand run charts, it's a tool that it gives you all the information to understand data at a glance, and we can just get that by eyeballing the run chart. So is it common cause? Is it special cause variation? Is there evidence of improvement? Is the data collection or any unexpected thing that is influencing the run chart? And we can understand the data story, because at the end of the day, when we present that information, all the data is giving you a story, because that's what, if we are doing some improvement work, if there are increasing crisis calls, if there are increasing wait times, when we plot over a period of time, we can understand that there is a connection, there is a story behind it, and which is crucial to making improvements. So this is an example from one of our first cohorts of E-QIP, that there were referrals over a period of time, and they made improvement, various changes. And this visual representation gives you a very clear idea about when a change happened, what was the impact, and then you can clearly annotate on the graph to see the actual changes that are happening. So the run charts are pretty useful in that way. So remember, just a few tips on run charts. Again, it's a discussion that's more important in this matter. It gives you an opportunity to have that connection with your team about what's happening, what are you doing, and when you gather that gather that data and have that discussion with your team, it's a very valuable information, and that gives you the meaningful discussion for your improvement journey. So it's the story behind the data that helps you to determine whether your theory or assumptions are working or not. So at this point, there is a lot of information that run charts have, and we are interested, if you will be interested to having a separate seminar, some webinar for this point. And please indicate your vote by answering this one question. And remember, so the E-QIP team and all our planning committee will discuss the suitable time in the coming months, and depending upon the interest, we will definitely discuss this.
And a good example of simple data collection.
Yes. So it looks like and I think it should be good enough. We have 60% voting complete. We got 70%, and I think that's good enough. It's all. Can everybody see the results? Yeah, so majority, it's a unanimous.
That pretty easy data to interpret, I think.
Yeah, there's no, no ambiguity for sure. Thank thank you, everyone. So
Did you want to make a chart, Rishi, to show exactly what we're looking at?
Do you want to
Maybe another time.
relaunch?
No, that's okay.
Relaunch the poll?
We don't need to recount. Alice, do we
Yeah.
need to recount for that one?
Yeah. Okay. So thank you everyone for participating, and definitely we'll discuss and plan a separate date for that. So as everybody else in today's webinar, they had suggested there's so many points that we can highlight about how we capture the right information, because what's missing out, and as Debbie was saying about the numerator and denominator, it plays a big role in how we are interpreting data when we don't have right information, when we have incomplete missing data. So pay attention to that. Challenges with preparing data reports. If you don't have access to OPOC portal, if your staff are not trained, delays of accessing that information, that can be a crucial challenge in that getting that vital information. Don't get carried away by a single data point that is outside of your comfort zone, and because that might be the special cause, as we were talking earlier. Missed opportunity to dig deeper. So always question that information, question the data, and use your client voice, client advisory, or any other forum that you may have. Ask your clients why that matters, because if we miss that, you're going to lose out that critical information. Again, reacting to something that looks like a change, but it is not. It's just one data point. So gather data over a period of time. That's going to help out. And as Alice mentioned, like in QI, we have data that is good enough. You don't spend hours gathering special reports. Don't ask your staff to gather that extra work, to going through the charts. So make use of what you have rather than creating extra work. And again, as Alice was saying, it was interesting but useless. So it's good to have, but don't spend hours. Don't make apple to oranges comparison, because each one is different. So stick to what you have. And as Noshiba was saying about the benchmarks and peer-to-peer comparison. So compare your data with your peers that are in your similar shoes, similar settings, providers, rather than a setting which is not in your area. So pay attention to those pitfalls. And this is a summary that we will be adding on as part of our series of webinars. So some of the keys to success when getting started in your quality improvement plan journey. Be curious, as Debbie was saying, be curious and ask questions. Ask questions to the board, senior leaders, what's your priority, what are the, involve your clients, tenants about the strength and area of improvement for the agency. Use the data for decision-making, as we looked in the second chapter, because that plays a big role. And we will be going much deeper into data literacy in our separate webinar series. So please do join as well on that note as well. The first one is on November 24th, I think. Think of your data over a period of time versus single point, as we saw using run charts. Remember, everything that counts cannot be counted. So look at the qualitative data, look at the comments that the clients are providing, because that gives such a very rich data that don't ignore those comments. And Chris showed us in our last webinar about the OPOC portal, how to gather that vital information. So pay attention to that. Be sure everyone defines the data being collected in the same way. So standardizing tools, operating definition, as Debbie had said earlier, like that gives a very groundwork for your work. Stubby pencil data collection. Alice showed us that just using those 5 like using the old school where it always works. Don't go into high, choose labor intensive Excel or any other difficulty for the staff. Make it easy, keep it fun, as Alice showed, like because that's where the group data will come from. We are interested in good enough data. Just use what you have. And data for heat, data for light, not heat. It's all about the learning. It's about having fun, making sure it's not an extra work. And don't let perfection be the enemy of improvement, because perfection is always, there is always room for improvement. Involve clients, tenants, that's always, we need to be client-centered in one of the, so that's the goal of our improvement work. And targets for improvement should be both aspirational and achievable, as Noshiba had already discussed. So I hope this, and we are happy to take any questions, and I'm passing over to Laurie, I think.
Okay. Resources. Okay.
Laurie, just before you take over, just want to bring everyone's attention to something I just put in the chat box a moment ago, is the link to the data literacy webinar series, a 3-part series beginning in a couple of weeks, first part of 3. And if you follow that link to our eenet.ca website, you can read more about each part in the series and register as well.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Okay, so for additional resources, there's a link here for the E-QIP QIP technical specifications for OPOC indicators number 1, 12, 27, and 30. Next slide, please. Any questions for anyone on the panel today? Chris, are there any outstanding questions in the chat box?
No, it's all quiet.
Okay, everyone's quiet today. Okay, next slide, please. So coming soon, chapter 4 will be change ideas. Now what do we do to actually make this all happen? So the objectives of this upcoming webinar will be understand the difference between activity and change ideas, understand the PDSA cycle and how to use it to test your change ideas, understand the relationship between predications and data collection, understand how to scope tests of change for rapid learning, and discuss keys to success. So that webinar will be held December 2nd from 1 to 2 p.m. And there will be a link following for registration. Next slide, please. So this week marks the launch of our Foundations to QI e-learning course with the go live of our introductory module. So this course is a comprehensive introductory quality improvement course customized for the community mental health and addiction sector. The course is comprised of 7 stages, an introduction and 6 modules, and takes approximately 4 hours to complete. So registration information will follow. Next slide, please. So other ways to stay in touch with E-QIP is to visit our website at www.e-QIP.ca. You can follow us on Twitter and tag us using hashtag E-QIPON, and stay connected to the E-QIP community of practice on Quorum. Next slide, please. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to access our QI webinars and join our mailing list to receive our quarterly newsletters. Next slide, please. We appreciate hearing from you, so please take a few moments to help us evaluate today's event by completing our survey. And I believe this link will be emailed to you as well. And next slide, please. And so thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you on December 2nd.
And if I can just say, for those who played the game of figuring out how many people were going to be attending, we had 41 at 11:23. So Shar is the closest at 43. Our guess was 43. So yay, Shar. Just to answer.
Yeah, a question came in at the very last minute there under the radar. Looks like Noshiba has already taken a stab at it.
And I was stabbing too.
Okay.
But most importantly,
oh, sorry, I'll give a quick verbal response. I think one of the things we always want to think about in terms of timeframes with data is it's about learning, and you want to learn quick and fail fast. So the longer, you know, if you're collecting data once a month, it's going to take you a month or on a monthly basis. It's going to take you a month. If it's 3 months, 6 months, think of how long it's going to take you to learn from that data. And if there is a way of collecting it so you can learn quick, fail fast, you're going to be able to pivot and adapt and adopt more quickly.
Yeah, and just to add to Alice's, so some of it, like there may be places where you can't collect data quickly. So sometimes also think about what might be some of the process measures you would use. So as you're going through, your outcome may take longer to get to your outcome, but maybe there's something that's linked to that you will have to access to more quickly. Like, so for example, if one of the things you want to know is how long are our wait times, but it's taking you a long time to get your wait times data to change, but you can track your wait lists, or you can track your assessment times, or you can track something else. There may be other things that you can use in the interim that will show you whether your change ideas are working. Remember, your overall metric might be what you're trying to change overall, but you may have process measures that are going to move more quickly, and you could use those for your change ideas. Alice is smiling at me because I'm finally getting QI, because I really have no background or experience in QI at all. I don't know how you people let me get this job.
Well, you've been at it a year now. We're really hopeful.
Yes.
So we're giving you back 3 minutes, I think. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us.